Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. We have um, a very busy agenda, and our secretary also wanted to kick us off. Since we do have so much to talk about for the roll call, if the advisory council members can put their name into the chat, and we will use that as our roll call, and then I will turn it over to the Secretary of MDE.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. It's so good to see you all. I've never been a part of your meeting, so I feel kind of honored this morning. Well, I just want to start by just really thanking all of you for your hard work. I know that all of you have really busy schedules, but you took time out of your life, out of your jobs, your careers, all the things that you do to make a difference for Maryland. And honestly, I cannot thank you enough, really, for being a part of this. Now, I know that council members previously, from what I was told, voted to recommend that the legislator just, not make any moves right now on the EPR bill this session because that needs assessment is not done. And I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about that just for a minute. So, well, first of all, I just want to say that train is moving. And I want all of us and all of you to be on the train and not be at the bus stop while the train goes by. And so that means this is your time to share your voice, to be a part of it. And I don't know if you all know this or not, but the other 5 states did not even have a needs assessment. It just, it was done. And so, yes, it is a great opportunity, but I'm telling you, you don't actually need it. What we need is your brains, your thoughts, all of your experience to just pour into all the recommendations and all that you're doing. I would say rely on what you know, because all of you are on this council because you're brilliant, you know this stuff, and you will make a difference in shaping that legislation. I don't know if many of you know, but before I came here, I was the undersecretary at California's Environmental Protection Agency. Cal Recycle was under me, that leadership. And we went through SB222 when I was there. It was brutal. It took a long time. There's a lot of fights and arguments, and we got it done at the end. But I'm telling you, if they didn't come together, everyone, the legislators and, the advocates and stakeholders, to really sit down and shape what they now have, it would have never been done. And so that's my last point. I just want to say this is not an easy process, but I know that you all can make this happen. And I'll tell you one more thing. In Maryland, just like in California, we don't actually have time not to move forward. The landfill capacity is very limited. And so if we don't start right now and get this done, I don't know what the future will hold. Because again, the landfill there's hardly any capacity left. And so I just wanted to thank you for letting me do this, but I really wanted to just be a part of the beginning of your meeting today and ask that you all try to get to a decision. I want your voices heard. I don't want the legislators moving forward without hearing from you. And that's probably what will happen if you can't, hopefully agree on the recommendations. That's all I wanted to say. Good luck today. I know you all can do it. If you need me for anything, I'm here. I'll be happy to provide any kind of assistance or advice you need. That's it for me.
Madam Secretary, thank you very much. That's a good exhortation, and we really appreciate your taking the time to really explain this to us. Thank you. I think I can tell you this group is really collegial, and we're going to do the right thing for the state.
Good. We need you all to, please.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you. All right. Well, unless you have questions for me, I'm going to let you all do your good business. Any questions before I let you get to work? All right. Thank you. Enjoy today. Bye
Thank
now.
you very much.
All right. I also think our co-chairs wanted to make some comments before we get started, so I will turn it over to Angie.
Thank you, Brad. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Secretary, for speaking this morning. That was really great, and I'm so thankful that you were able to join us and kind of explain, what's going on. And I just want to thank the entire team here for everything that we've done, all of your comments, all of your passion. It's not going unnoticed. This is what we need, and this is why everyone's here. Again, we've all agreed on in the beginning not to move forward, but we have to. So keep in mind, we have 10 recommendations out there. That doesn't mean that we all have to agree on all 10 of them and that we have to present all 10 of them. I don't know if anyone's really, or if we made that kind of clear. We want to present something and to the best of our abilities, but it doesn't have to be all 10 of these if we don't really fully agree on all 10 of these. So let's, kind of come together and really figure out which ones are the most important and the ones that, we really feel confident based on all of our expertise putting through. And I feel if we do it that way and, we don't have the mindset of, oh, we have to do these 10, then, I think we're all going to agree on something. And I think we will have a good, healthy, strong recommendation to put forth based on what we have and based on the information that we've received and all the data that we have and all of our expertise. So again, thank you. Everybody's comments, questions, and recommendations have been wonderful. It's been great to see that come through. And, I think we all can agree on something. And I'm excited to see, what happens today. So thank you.
Well
Michael?
said, Angie. Thank you very much. You summarized it very well. Back to you, Bradley.
All right. Okay, I'm going to share my screen real quick. Chris, I did see that you had your hand up. Did you have any comments?
Yeah, just really quick, Brad. I know there's a lot of back and forth on the emails last couple days. Mike had sent that email out on Wednesday for everybody to review. And look, we all want to get this right and do what's best for the state. But there's been a lot of issues in the other 5 states that they're going backwards in this process. And that's the last thing we want to have happen here in Maryland. So, we really just need to be diligent and check it and get it right, even if it's like something smaller that Angie spoke about. But we're not just, trying to be put roadblocks up. We do want to get this right. So I just wanted to say that. And with that, I'll put my best effort forth to help the process. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Scott, and then we can get right into this.
Thank you, Scott, to 5 Foot the Glass Packaging Institute. I think what I heard from the secretary is kind of what some of us discussed in the meeting where we took the vote, where a majority decided to want to wait, where not all of us wanted to wait, and the legislature intends to move forward. And as at least I suggested, and I know there were others, we not wait. The document that was sent around, I think, is a good outline for us to go through to see if we can find consensus, but it doesn't include everything that we need. So I think we should go through with it as diligently as possible.
Yeah. Chaz, and then we got to get into the recommendations.
Yeah, I would simply say that it's now a month into the legislature. It's a 3-month legislature. You're getting close to the date in which legislation must be filed, or else it has to go through rules permission to be entered. Passing a law in the last 2 months or the last month of the legislature is this depth and complexity is an open invitation to getting it wrong. And I think we have to take that seriously. I'm not quite understanding why this rush to judgment.
Yeah. Martha?
Yeah, I'm concerned because the most important thing we need to understand going forward is what the objectives of this activity are. And there were objectives specifically, I believe, introduced 2 meetings ago, and they were on the PowerPoint presentation from last time, and we never actually looked at them individually. And it's very difficult to make recommendations on the framework for implementing something without knowing what it is the objective is. So I would feel very much more comfortable voting on recommendations today if we could vote on some of those individual objectives that were put out there in the presentation, but were omitted from this document that was circulated for today. And I thank you, by the way, Brad, for all the work you put into this. And I also wanted to know, there were comments solicited by Friday, the end of the day, which I think I barely got in, but what happened to those comments that were made?
Yeah,
by
so
people who commented.
So for the folks who commented,
I was going to say, and what is the purpose of the February 13th meeting versus this meeting? Are we going to be finished today and not have any more meetings, or were we going to continue working on this?
so
Yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead.
So the reason we wanted to get a meeting in earlier because there are some deadlines to submit legislation by. It does sound like if legislation is drafted by one of the, I'm not exactly sure, but Augustine's office at that level, there's a different process, or there could be a different process for introducing legislation as well. So we just wanted to make sure that we were getting in before that. So I think the intent is to try and get through these today and send forward the recommendations where we can agree on. As far as the comments go, I took those from all the folks where we received those, and I tried to incorporate those in, and then we can have a discussion on what those recommendations are. So, like the first one right here was from Trash Free Maryland. It said environmental and health considerations. The comment was to maybe change this to reduce environmental and human health impacts. And then there was another comment from the Forest and Paper Association that this might be adding some complexity to the regulations. So just wanted to start that conversation. Is this something that we want to add as being a part of the benefits and impact of EPR legislation? We also had some more comments on this as well. So Chaz?
Yeah, just one first question. I've always been under the impression since we started that we were using the Senate Bill 222 as the basis for what we're doing. Has that strategy been abandoned?
So for the third reader, I mean, we were when we were talking about those in this meeting, we were hearing from a lot of different stakeholders that was a dead bill, that we need to create something from that meets the needs of Maryland. So that's why we asked for some input from folks. We received some information from the Packaging Association, in addition to Sierra Club and the Trash Free Maryland, and that's what we distributed in our last meeting to start those conversations around the framework. But I think it was pretty clear that the council didn't necessarily want to start with the third reader, because there were a lot of issues for multiple different stakeholders in that.
We really never discussed that as a whole, and actually that law is unusually attuned to Maryland. And there's a great deal of value in what was in 222. I'm just a little surprised we're making this sudden decision to submit a small number of recommendations. And some of these recommendations are word for word what was in 222.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for the comment. So this change right here, in terms of a benefit and impact to EPR packaging, is this something that the council is on board with? Is there any adjustments that we want to make to that? Anything like that?
Are we going to include greenhouse gas impact in that life cycle analysis?
We did have a recommendation to strike the life cycle and maybe reword it as strive for circularity or closed loop systems. But I mean, that's what the meeting is for. Is that something that we want to add climate change impacts as well?
Because if we're simply adopting a system that increases greenhouse gas emissions, it seems to me we've shot ourselves in the foot.
Yeah, I think it's a good comment. Scott? You're on mute too.
Sorry, I didn't do any edits myself. I would have suggested the circularity over life cycle. Life cycle plays a role in what the pro plan and the fee setting and things of that nature, but life cycle assessment itself is not a impact or benefit of the EPR legislation. Greenhouse gas reduction can be, but so is not filling landfills, so is litter, so is all sorts of other things can be a benefit. If we get stuck on discussing the benefits of the legislation, we're never gonna have a recommendation. I think, Bradley, what we really need to get to is stick to this is more in the findings. If you were to put this into legislative language, I would put most of recommendation 1 is in the findings. I think we really need to get to the scope of the kinds of recommendations for the kinds of system that we want to, that we would recommend be designed by the legislature.
So yeah, I think it's a good comment. So I guess the question for the group is, do we start moving on to recommendation 2, and then this one wouldn't necessarily be included in this recommendation package, because there's definitely a lot we could add in here. Martha?
Yes. I just wanted to say that life cycle analysis is a tool, and greenhouse gas emissions are part of environmental impacts. And you remember that there was a definition of environmental impacts that was proposed that's at the very bottom of this document. For some reason, it got separated from the spot. To meet the impact of a covered material on human health and environment from extraction and processing of the raw materials, composing the material through manufacturing, distribution, use, recovery for reuse, recycling, or composting and final disposal from the Minnesota bill. So all of that is included, the greenhouse gas emissions and these other environmental impacts. And I think we should look at these recommendations before proceeding, because otherwise we're making recommendations for a structure, but without direction on what the objectives, what is this trying to achieve. So it just doesn't make any logical sense to me. I don't know how others feel, but I'd be interested in a vote on that one. Thank you.
Yeah.
So Martha, just to clarify, you're asking for us to vote on recommendation 1, which I agree, but is there, when you look at the language, environmental outcomes to ensure safe management of materials at the end of life, meaning we're not going to be putting any waste somewhere. Or if you look at Scott's earlier comment, circularity is really what we're preaching here, right? Because you don't want this thing going to landfill or going to anywhere. If you eliminate that and you go to true circularity, you're not going to have any issue with the greenhouse gas because it's embedded in there. So if you think we should vote for it, let's vote for this and then move on to the other recommendations.
All right. I know Scott had her hand up, and then we can. Yeah, go ahead.
I would like it if there was increased clarity on the vote structure, that kind of thing, because I think last time there was some confusion about what exactly we're voting on, how that vote is being recorded. So if we're going to start voting on things, I would like that discussion to happen first. I'm sorry, I know that that takes time, but I think that for all of us, if we don't know what we're voting for, it becomes a whole nother story, especially because this is, you know, being recorded. The other thing is, I mean, I feel like the second bullet and the final bullet have a lot of similarities, and perhaps they could be simplified into a single item, or one, you know, bullet 2 could be, you know, the last one is a little bit more specific. You know, I think that, you know, a little bit of an oversimplification of AFMPA's perspective on reduce environmental and health impacts. It's not that we're opposed to that. We're not. That's not what I was saying. It's that EPR is incredibly complicated. We're seeing that all over the country, and throwing additional goals that have been difficult for Maryland to pass on their own into legislation like this makes me worried that nothing will get productively passed here, or that certain other important elements could be watered down in pursuit of other aspects. The other thing I'll just say is that LCAs have a value. That value is like $50,000 per product that gets an LCA. So if you're a producer and you potentially have to do an LCA for each individual SKU, as is what's going on in Oregon, you know, you've got to make a really hard decision about the cost of that versus what you could actually, you know, how that could actually benefit. And so I want to be realistic and blunt about the fact that from a producer standpoint, an LCA is a huge cost burden for smaller producers or for producers that make a whole bunch of different things. So just putting that out there for some context.
Yeah.
No, I think that's a great point about LCAs and the cost. I'm a little concerned that circularity is in 2 of the dots, and there's slightly different definitions of circularity. And I think we need to figure out what we mean by circularity.
Yeah. So, and just going back on the voting, how I've seen this done at the Maryland Climate Change Commission, there is in the solar recycling work group that I manage as well. There's typically someone presents a motion, which Scott is presenting a motion. There's a second to that, and then we would vote on that. So there's 21 council members. So that means you would need 12 members to vote to move forward that whatever that motion would be. So Scott made a motion. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, Bradley, I put a motion in the chat. I'll raise it here that we skip recommendation 1 section and not vote on that right now because it's findings and it's
not supposed to be finding. Oh, sorry.
I view what's written in section 1, having read every single EPR law in every state that has been recommended, as generally about the findings and the scope. And it'll take us the entire month, or it'll take us at least the entire day, and we won't get anywhere else. And I think there's structural issues that we've never really discussed later on that are more important to see if we can find consensus on. Move through the things that we can find consensus on relatively easily, and then buckle down on the harder ones.
All right. So we had a motion moved forward by Scott. Do we have a second? Peter?
Bradley, I can second.
Okay. All right. So for virtual meetings, we typically use the chat. If you look right next to the red phone, don't press the red phone because you'll get kicked out of the meeting, but there's a hand. So the motion that we not vote on the opening findings and goals at this time, and then we move on to the recommendations. If you are for that, can you raise your hand in the chat? All right. So I see 8 with their hands up, which we don't have the 12 needed unless if there's any more. And I should say that the only folks that can vote on this are board members as well. So I see Michael on there, or council members, I should say. Michael, are you a second for someone on the council or a member of the public?
I'm filling in for Delphine.
Ah, I see. Okay, yes. Okay, so if these folks can lower their hands. So we can vote on the alternative, walking through the benefits and impacts of packaging EPR. If the folks want to raise their hands, we would walk through these items.
So this is a motion to then go through the recommendation once, is that right?
Correct, yes.
I raised my hand.
All right. I see 5 on here. I know the name not available is Republic on the line. So, or either we didn't have enough to vote, I guess, and we do have a quorum. So,
Can I
Yeah.
make a suggestion? If there are those of us who have questions about particular benefits and packet, whatever, the first thing in recommendation 1, we very quickly, or concerns, changes, we very quickly try to get that done within a limited time period.
yeah, I think we could.
Brad, are you going with the majority? Let me clarify. In any case, because sometimes people will decide not to vote. You shouldn't the majority drive things so we can get going.
Yeah, I guess that's the discussion for the group. Is it the majority of the folks that are in the room? And we do have a quorum. I think we have, just quick count, 18 out of the 21 members. Or is the voting based off of we need 12 people, so that would be a majority of everyone who is on the council. And I'll move through the hands. Chaz?
Yeah, I think that when it comes to the first one, and when it comes to all of these, we need the majority. I think what this vote is clearly showing is a great deal of indecision about how to go forward and very little enthusiasm to go forward with recommendations. And I think that if we stampede or force recommendations,
That is not
we
the case.
guarantee failure. Now, my only point on recommendation 1 is we have 2 definitions of circularity. Which one are we going to take? One other point I'd make, we do not have any packaging for EPR programs in operation in this country. We have 5 theoretical programs that are moving through the phases of implementation. None have yet started operation. So we really have nothing to learn from yet. And the United States poses very unique challenges for EPR for packaging.
Yeah, Eileen, I think you were next.
Sorry, no, I should take my hand down. I was just one thing to note, Bradley, in the recording, for some reason, my name is coming up as James KO instead of Eileen, and I don't know how to change that, but I just wanted to note that.
I think it's under what profile you may be signed in under. That might be the
Got
reason
it.
why. So, it is coming up as James.
Okay, just for the record, I'm here. I don't want to leave and then come back in. Sorry, under a different Gmail.
So Brad, can you at least note that, and then it's recorded so we know that it is Eileen Cow.
Thank you.
Yeah, and what I would ask is, if you guys don't mind, since we have a quorum, if we can go with the majority, which is how I've seen these things work, that would be the best way. At some point, we might have unanimity, but it's not necessary to get things moving if we have a majority, since we have a quorum here. Over to you, Brad.
Yeah, Scott, and then we can.
No, I was just gonna disagree with Chaz's conclusions about what the disagreement is over here. I'm not suggesting, I don't think skipping the findings part to get to the more substantive start is an indication of a disagreement about moving forward. I think it is, and I understand your trepidation with the fact that 5 states and none have, gone into place yet, but at every single other step, the needs assessment is always a part of what goes into it. The needs assessment just gives you an assessment of what infrastructure you have in the state and against what performance level you want to achieve. What we need to focus on is what performance level do we want to achieve. The needs assessment is almost done. But what the legislature really needs from us is, what should the policy be in Maryland? How strong? Do we want a 50% recycling rate, 60, 70, 80, 90, that kind of thing? Then you take your needs assessment and you figure out how much delta you have between what you have in hand today and where you want to go. And that's what the legislature really needs from this august group of people assembled on the advisory board, not a debate over the findings. It's just, but the chairman has made a recommendation. I support the chair. Every other group that I've ever been in, if we have a quorum, the majority of the people in the quorum make the decision. So.
Yes, so just to review, we had 8 to vote to move on to recommendation 2, and then I think I saw at most 5 to vote on discussing recommendation 1. So we do have a quorum. That is the vote. So we can move on. That doesn't necessarily mean that folks can't provide testimony when the bill does drop. We heard today, and when Augustine was on the line, I forget which meeting that was. It might have been 2 meetings ago, that there's a intent to have legislation this session. So,
Brad, Bradley, so quickly, I think that's a very good point. What I would ask, this is an appeal to all of us. Let's continue on the journey we've been on, collegial journey, because even when this thing goes to the Senate or the House, will be opportunity for us to go and testify. And that is when you can even put other things that we may be missing. So what I'm trying to say is that I don't believe that if everything we're saying is not captured, at least from this framework recommendation, that all hope is lost. We still have time to go there and testify and see if we can add additional things. But please, I appeal to all of you, let's try and as good as we can, don't let perfection be the enemy of good. I think you guys are so brilliant. You have ideas. Let's leverage that and move on. So thank you all. So Brad?
Yeah. So moving on to recommendation 2, we did receive some comments on what went out to the group. So instead of develop plan with producers, develop plan in consultation with producers. This came from CAA. Then we had on where the fund would be housed, that would be with the pro. There was a comment from the Forest and Paper Association to have government oversight built into that. There was another comment to invest in approving local recycling infrastructure. There was another comment to change this item right here. Instead of saying invest in improving infrastructure to make recycling competitive with virgin materials, invest in current and new infrastructure to increase recycling capabilities and capacity and support responsible end markets. I should note another part of the Forest and Paper Association's comment was they are also investing in sustainable foresting practices as well. So just wanted to clarify that as well. And then instead of respond to advisory board recommendations, there was a recommendation to rephrase that, consider recommendations brought forward by the advisory council. So those are the recommended changes to this recommendation, and then I'll open up the floor for any comments and discussion on this one. Peter?
Thank Bradley. I don't know if you needed 2 invests. I mean, you could add local into the second one if that makes sense. Just as a friendly, I don't have a strong preference, but it's saying the same thing twice. The only thing I would caveat is, the pro will be investing obviously locally, but the pro may invest in markets that may not be necessarily local, that might be outside. So just as long as it's keeping it open.
Yeah. I think that's reasonable that it could be both. And if we state both, then at least local and markets that may not be local are still being considered. Maybe it's prioritized local markets too. I'm going to go to the hands. Martha, you had a comment?
Yes, I'm concerned that this bullet, let me scroll down, that this bullet on setting goals, MDE should be able to set some targets in regulation in the rulemaking process. Setting goals should not simply be left up to the PRO. I'm very concerned that this language could be used to shut out any accountability to the state for the things that the public wants.
Yes, and in
the
MDE,
in terms of targets.
In the MDE goals and responsibilities, it does talk about MDE setting goals through regulation as well. So just wanted to point that out also.
Well, I mean, MDE should have something
well,
to
then
say
what you're
about
supporting?
performance standards, not have the PRO dictate the performance standards. I mean, it seems to me.
Right. So, and then we'll get to MDE's roles and responsibilities. We also approve those final goals that are in the plan as well. So it's
Are they enforceable if they're just,
because
sorry, but are they
Been submitted.
enforceable, legally enforceable goals if there's something that the PRO puts in their plan? As opposed to something that's in statute or done during the rulemaking process?
Scott, if it's all right, I'll skip over to Peter since they're currently working in Colorado right now. But Peter, do you have a comment on that one?
Yeah, I was just going to say, Martha, typically they are. Yes, they are. They do hold the ability for the government to hold as the plan is set out, the department has the ability to enforce upon what's approved as part of the program plan. That's fairly typical. It's typical as well in Canada as well. That's the way that program plans have been set, and the government can also intervene in those plans if they need changes.
Okay, thank you.
Scott?
Thanks. I was gonna say something similar to what Peter said. The government can always approve the plan. There's a role to, a place to approve the plan, to agree with what the PRO comes up with, but agree with everything that Peter had said. My one add here is in the third bullet. There is some green language about government oversight needs to be built in on the fees. And I just want to, use the word transparency on fee setting, I think is helpful. Otherwise, I'm okay with what I see.
You mean on fees right here? Just to add on fees?
Yeah, I'm just generally advocating for some transparency.
Fee setting. Okay. All right. Okay.
So you could add a role, Bradley. You could add a separate bullet if it helps to say, the pro has a role in ensuring transparency around performance and fees. And maybe that captures Scott's point.
Fees and what else? There was one more.
Fees and performance, which I think gets partially to Martha's comments around ensuring that there's understanding of what is happening and how it's being measured and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense. And by the way, just to Martha, to reassure you, MDE rules are clearly defined down as we go down. You will see that. So I think this will be a little redundant, which is okay. MDE still has a role in there.
And there's also language about a third-party audit later.
Yeah,
here
yeah.
as well. So, Chaz, you had a comment.
Yeah, just a thought about the PRO. We've never really discussed what it is and who it is. And it appears that the PRO is simply those companies that have invested in it, the board members. What is their responsibility to the fee payers besides collecting their money? And we're giving this group protection is in 222 that this group is not subject to state antitrust laws. That's a lot of power to give to one group. And I think we should give some thought to that.
Peter?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the other states, obviously the producers are consulted on all of the changes that are being made, including fees, and that is part of the participant agreement that is signed by producers with the pro.
Yeah, I understand that, but the issue is, are the producers listened to, or are they just nodded at and then their comments are ignored? And we have no basis to know because we have no operating PRO in this area in this country, although we have had some interesting experiences in Canada with this.
So if I can just respond, Chaz, I think the idea is this is dealt with partially through the program plan. We're required to work with the advisory board, seek feedback from the advisory board, The department also has the ability to review the plans and to review how performance is proceeding. And if there are concerns that are being raised by producers or others, there's the ability to intervene.
Well, I was also referring to the PRO's relationship to the fee payers. Those 2,000 or 3,000 companies that are coming up with the money for this.
I think that
Yeah.
fits in the same bucket as to what's the methodology to develop the fee structure and what's the consultation process on an annual basis to develop those fees.
Yeah, and just to recap for folks, we did put an application out for the producer responsibility organization, and in October of 2023, we did select CAA to be the pro in Maryland. So, all right, okay, so discussed a little bit about the comments that we did receive. We did add this one right here. Is there a motion to vote on this? Looks like Peter raised his hand. Is there a second? All right. So we do have a second. So voting on this recommendation as written, if you could raise your hand if you are for this, and then we'll get to the no votes.
Hey, Bradley, I'm not sure how you want me to categorize this or caveat it beyond this statement, but I just wanted it to be reflected in the notes that the Maryland, Delaware, DC Beverage Association, just even with regard to the votes cast, just reserves the right to provide additional feedback once we see the language of the legislation introduced. So thanks.
Yeah, and I'm sure everyone will give testimony on the legislation. This is pre-legislation and our recommendations that could be considered.
Yep, no, you're familiar with the process, just letting you know. I don't know. Thanks.
Yep, and we do have a note taker. We'll make sure that that is in the notes as well.
Thank you.
So I see 8 yes votes to move for just marking. All right, if folks can lower their hands. And if you are not, if you're voting no on this recommendation as written, if you can raise your hand right now. Anyone voting no on this one? I do not see any hands.
What's the number of voting members on the panel today?
So I counted, I believe it was 18 in the chat. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Oh, 16. Was there anyone who may have joined late that did not put their name into the chat when we were doing roll call? So William, so we have 7, which means 9 would be the majority of the folks in the room.
Bradley, I sent you a separate note letting you know I was going to be 29 and 30 minutes late.
Yes, yes. And thank you for that. Frankie? Is there an issue with your mic?
How about now? Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, we can.
Okay, great. Would my cam not count for Delphine? And with that, would that be 18?
So I did count.
So you have
Oh.
Vinny, Frankie, Chris, Peter, Michael, Elaine, Martha, Kelly, Abigail, Leo.
I did count Michael in the
You did
16.
count him. Okay, never mind then.
William did get his. Angie, did you have a comment?
Yep. Thank you.
No, sorry about that.
Okay, all right. So I believe I have all the voting members that are on the line. We have 17 total, which means 9 would be a majority vote. So. All right. So it looks like we didn't get enough on this one right here, although we did have multiple folks that did not vote. I've seen other groups do a vote for an abstain as well. So we had 8 votes to move forward this recommendation, 0 no votes. Are there any abstaining votes that are out there?
That would be me. That's Angie. So.
Yeah. Kelly, are you an abstaining vote as well?
Yes.
Yeah, and
Well, I think anybody who doesn't vote is an abstaining vote. That's kind of a non sequitur.
well, no, that's why I was asking folks to put up their hand as well, or clarifying. But we can also have some more discussion on this one. I know Scott, please might want some more discussion. Does anybody else have any recommendations, comments on this particular recommendation, things that we might want to take out, things that just need to be clarified? And then once we get through that, if we make any changes, we can go for another vote.
So Bradley, if I may suggest, could you just record 8 yes votes, 2 abstentions, or whatever? So because if anybody voted not to, I think it's important to capture it on this first one, and then we can go ahead on the next. Once we revisit it or revise it, we can vote again.
Well, actually, it's 8 yes votes, 9 not voting.
Well, we did have 2 abstain, 1 from Angie, and I believe 1 from Kelly, unless that was incorrect.
No, that was correct.
Yeah. So that means that we have 7 folks who didn't vote on this one.
Are you suggesting we otherwise categorize people that did not vote because they did not choose to abstain, or are their votes don't count because they did not click in for any of the 3 options for this one?
So their votes would count. I'm just doing the math that we had 8 votes, 0 no votes on this, 2 to abstain, which means that we would have 7.
Unaccounted for, which I think is an abstention, isn't it? Or is it they're unable to get to the desk?
So, hey, Brad, this is Chris Pilser. I abstain as well. So you can make that 3. Thank you.
And it's Martha. I abstain also.
Bradley, this is Eileen. Oh,
Yeah.
yep, this is Eileen. I also abstain then.
John, were you on there?
Yeah, I abstain as well.
I'll abstain.
I do think we're missing 2 other folks on here who have not voted yet. Let me just go through the list real quick. Okay. All right. Stephanie.
Just a quick question, just for the sake of clarity. If people don't vote, why not just deem them to have abstained? So then you either are yes, no, or abstained.
I think that, yeah, that's the question. If we have 2 folks that didn't vote, does that mean abstain? Which would bring this up to 9 then. Kelly?
I was going to respond to just briefly to Scott's question in the chat. Like I did not, I abstained because I didn't oppose this recommendation, but there were things that I would have liked to have seen added. I felt like it limited a little bit the scope of the PRO and the whole program by defining the PRO roles this way. I'm not opposed to this, but I would have wanted something, and we didn't agree on goals, so it's hard, to do it in the absence of the goals. But the role of the PRO, I think, could also be to set those fees in a way that incentivizes producers to meet the objectives of the program, or something like that, that's open-ended enough to fit our framework model, but allows for, once the legislators decide on the objectives of the program, the fees should incentivize meeting those goals. And they might be more than what we've enumerated here. And then I think I could vote for it, depending on how we phrase that.
And so later, we do have some language about eco-modulation as well. So fees in such a way to incentivize goals through eco-modulation, or just leave it at that?
I'm saying to incentivize using materials and design, something that gets at, the producers have the expertise and the ability to do the redesign that we're trying to, we're not meeting the goals. We're not, we have a problem right now with the environment, and the producers can change the packaging. So incentivize design change, or incentivize materials, or incentivize the producers to meet the goals of the program. That's really general.
Brad, just to help the process, Kelly, let's just make sure we have this process. You've tabulated it the way it is. So what we're doing now is either revising it, like Kelly is suggesting, so that we can have another vote. I would say that's the way to go about it. So if she has any revision, include it, because that's the type of thing we want. And then we vote again. That's why I wanted to make sure we have the numbers clearly out there. And the idea of having no votes is okay, and abstain is okay too, but you can't just combine them.
Hey, Bradley, Kelly used the term program goals, which was very general. I think that could be sufficient.
To incentivize meeting program goals design changes, and materials used in packaging.
Tiffany, is that what you mean?
No, I just meant putting a period at the end of program goals as
Okay.
what is Kelly
Yeah,
articulated.
that's what I was trying to understand. Thanks.
Oh wait, that was Tiffany. So just wanted, since this was Kelly's add-on, do you want program goals period, or do you want to list out what some of those are? And
I thought that was what one of the suggestions Kelly put out there. I was just going back to what I thought she said.
Yeah, we may, since we haven't agreed on program goals, we may have to leave it at that, but that lets us get through the vote.
okay. All right, Chaz and then Peter.
I think I really sent some frustration on members of the task force that this is being rushed through. We got the memo from Michael on Wednesday afternoon. You were asked for responses by Friday at the end of the day. That's not a lot of time to think and respond. And unfortunately, not everything that's on this chart is something that all of us had access to. Some are apparently individual comments made, but not shared with the group as a whole. So I'm concerned that we're building the structure for a legislative disaster because we're just being rushed. We're not being allowed to reflect. We're not being allowed to think through this stuff. And that's not a good way to do legislation, friends. As any of us who've lobbied know for a fact.
Peter, you had a comment?
Yeah, sorry, I was just going to say program requirements may be a better way to go, just because I'm assuming that, there'll be requirements for us to make sure that, the costs of materials reflects the cost to manage them in the system, and that there may be some requirements around some form of eco-modulation. So it's kind of more specific, I think, if those are elements that get added in afterwards, rather than just goals. But that depends where we land. So,
Kelly, since this was your recommendation to add on, are you fine with me adding program requirements instead of program goals?
I think so, on the fly here.
All right. Is there anything else that we would want to add, delete, revise in this recommendation right here? Martha?
Yeah, sorry. I'm not satisfied with putting program requirements in there. I would want it to reflect program goals. So, sorry, difference of opinion, Kelly. But that's you wanted comments. So.
Yeah. And Peter, this was your
yeah, I'm fine. I mean, requirements has more force to it. Goals is sort of a lofty type thing, and I don't know. To me, one's more direct. But whatever the committee wants to choose, you could put both. It's easier for the pro to implement based on concise language. What is required of them?
Yeah, we can also have a version 1 and version 2 of this bullet as well, and do a vote on that. So I've seen that done before. Angie, you had a comment?
I guess it's too much to put. I know we're kind of not agreeing on the language. Is it too much to put and, like, just have them both, like goals and requirements, or something of that nature to kind of encompass everything?
I think that makes sense.
Would that make people? Yeah. Sorry, that's all.
All right.
Kind of a minor point, Bradley, but at the top, the role of the producer organization could be, shouldn't that be is? could be is just a suggestion, a thought, a maybe.
Well, that's what these are. These are recommendations also. So, yeah, I can change that to is right here, and then we can vote on that.
Or should
In
be.
some reasons, there's no difference between the two terms, but could be allows for change, and is just what it is.
How about just saying should, since that would be the language one normally uses this in a recommendation.
Jazz, are you good with that?
Sure.
All right. So made some edits, additions. Is there, do we have any other comments for additions, revisions? Or are we good to do a vote number 2, a motion for a vote 2 on this recommendation? All right. I guess, is there a motion to do a second vote on this recommendation? So Peter, is there a second? I saw Scott, and there's maybe one more on there. So vote 2. So voting yes to move forward with this recommendation as written, with the additions that we made. If folks can raise their hand so that we can do a count. So I do see 10. Um, 11. Any stragglers out there?
There, 2 of the bullets say the same thing about the advisory council, just FYI.
Which ones?
The last one, consider recommendations brought forward by the advisory council, and a couple bring forward recommendations for review by the, oh, maybe that's not the same. Bring forward recommendations for review by the advisory council. I don't know. That was a little bit confusing.
I think one is if they get a comment from the advisory council, then they have an obligation to bring it forward, and then considering whether to put that in the plan, which would then be reviewed and then approved by MDE. And then the advisory council would have the ability to comment on that as well. All right. So I'm going to ask folks to lower their hands. So this next vote is a vote no on this recommendation as written, and to not move it forward. If you can raise your hands now. So I see 0 no votes. So the next vote will be if you are abstaining on this vote, please raise your hand right now.
Well, I think it speaks for itself.
I do see 5 abstains. We have 17 folks, and that means there's 1 no vote on here. Okay. All right. you can lower your hands now. We can move on to the next recommendation.
I'm sorry,
So-
Bradley, isn't a no vote, isn't that someone who didn't vote, isn't that an abstention in a way? I mean, now
Yeah,
you have 4 options: vote yes, vote no, vote abstain, and then no vote. It seems to me like there's something not quite right with the way you're tallying these. Is there an attorney on the line?
yeah. So we had a recommendation from Stephanie to count it as a or present too. To loop them in with abstain. We had a recommendation from Michael to keep them separate. I guess that's the question. As an advisory council, how do we want to count those? Frankie?
Could we simply just change it to didn't vote instead of no vote? 1 didn't vote. Would that address your concern, Elaine, everyone else? 2 didn't vote and with the first vote and 1 didn't vote.
That makes sense.
Me, it's
No,
me.
it doesn't. Still doesn't address your
what can-
concern.
I just feel like every time Bradley's adding more options here. You either are saying yes, you vote yes, or you're voting no. And so I just feel like the abstentions and then somebody not doing anything are kind of in the same bucket. I don't know. I don't know what the point of a 4th category.
I guess maybe to capture people that aren't participating, maybe. I don't know. I think to my point, it won't hurt. It's just more accurate. But I'm up to whatever the majority feels, right?
Yeah, and that is something that we can vote on as a council as well. Do we want to include no votes as a abstention? So, yeah, Martha, you had a comment?
I was going to say, one of the big recommendations coming out of this whole process is that for advisory councils, we need clear rules of procedure from the start. We could add that to the list because we should be confronting this in this very last meeting on how to record votes in the future.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, it's a good comment, definitely. So the recommendation is, I'm going to change this to did not vote. We can vote as a council. Do we want to, if someone didn't vote, to include that in the abstain total? That would be 1 vote. Or do we want to keep them separate, either as a no vote or did not vote? So for those who want to include no votes for the folks who were present into the abstaining vote, if you can raise your hand now.
Sorry, can you restate that? What are we voting on?
So this is more of a procedural question.
Yeah.
If someone does not vote on the recommendation, then that gets looped in as a abstaining vote.
I'm comfortable with that, but I think it should say include did not vote in abstain vote, because otherwise someone that votes against something would be potentially included in abstaining.
I think that's a good point.
So include no vote.
No, that's not, sorry, that's not what I meant. What I mean is what you've written here is include no vote in abstain vote.
Yes.
And that no vote is a vote that says, no, I do not support the recommendation. Or it could mean
Oh, I
they
see.
couldn't give a vote. The
Someone
language needs to be clarified. I'm not saying it needs to be a separate vote.
Okay, so include someone who did not vote in abstain vote.
Yes.
Is that better?
Yes.
So, and then this would be a separate did not vote from abstain vote. So I see 5 folks for this first one. Was there a 6th? I think there was a 6th.
That was me. I put it back up again. Sorry.
Yeah. There, I see a 7, 8. See a 10 in here. Was there someone who just lowered their hand? Oh, wait, Scott. Okay.
Bradley, I'm sorry. We're voting on a proposal to include people who did not vote in abstain.
Correct. Yes.
Is that what we're doing? Does that mean people who are present and not voting? Right. Obviously, somebody who's not present can't be put in abstain. I just want to make sure. I don't care what we call it, present, abstain, but if you're here and not, and people may have different reasons, right? Some may feel that they're conflicted and therefore they don't want to vote versus someone who's abstaining for some other reason.
Yeah, I think that's a good clarification. So if someone who is present and did not vote, you are including that vote into the abstain vote.
Right.
All right. So I see 9 hands. 10. Okay. So I see 10 hands. I'm going to ask folks to lower their hands. And then we will vote for separate did not vote from, so I should say, someone who is present and voted did not vote. Or I guess they and did not vote. From abstain vote. So folks can raise their hands on this one, or do we need any clarifications on this?
Brad, let me with the question is this: if you have a majority of the vote, like in this case, we have a quorum. Let's just move on and say it is what it is. So we voted for the second version, and you have a majority. I think we can move on. All these ones might just be to record. What I'm concerned about is we're spending too much time on a process for a process. So why don't we just go ahead and say, yeah, if that's what they want, we go with it. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. The majority has voted. Okay, so let's move on.
Yeah. So we
Because
would
have other things.
and then we would have 6 here. All right. Okay. Cool. I'm going to move on to recommendation 3. Then I'll put it on a different page just so we can get it all on one page. Okay. So what we sent out to folks was overseeing coordinated advisory council. We did get some comments from the Forest and Paper Association to have some sub bullets on this one right here. So recommend continued support and feedback with chairs to maximize objectives of meetings and their timely engagement by members respond to advisory council comments on program plan. See recommendation 4 on AC voting. I think that was another one. MD should also have the responsibility to set up a clear process for voting around recommendations. And establish clear timelines for advisory board meetings. Colorado has been very consistent with the meeting cadence right here. So there was another suggestion from the Forest and Paper Association. So potentially setting and expanding targets and possibly lowering targets with unexpected market issues, where there's an unexpected impact on ability to meet targets. There's another recommendation right here, right regulations can amend targets. This initially said expand on targets in regulation, and then changing this from a should to a could right here. Include the evaluation of other pros.
My
All right.
apologies for not sending this to the full group. I sent them kind of at a weird time of night and was thinking not to pester everybody, but instead it just meant that no one got to see them until now. So that was not an intention of not being transparent.
And unfortunately, it's very hard to see these on the screen. All of them, the sizing.
Yeah, I'll try and get
I can
to.
only read the first line of recommendation 4
Oh, so we're on recommendation 3 right now.
or 3, whatever.
Yep. So I was trying. Google Zoom ability doesn't scale very well. So we would be on recommendation 3 right now. Peter, I saw.
Yeah, sorry, Bradley. I was just going to say that if it's helpful, I'm more than happy to at least move this, and then we can have a discussion on it. But happy to if that's helpful.
Yeah. So you're moving to vote on this as written, correct, Peter?
Yes.
All right. Is there a second? All right, I see a second from Scott.
For discussion purposes, yes.
For discussion purposes, yeah. So, so voting to, I guess that's a. I think we need a discussion first, because Scott, I think you were saying vote on as written, or did I get that wrong?
I think I was just moving it for so move it so that we can then have a discussion about it.
Oh, I see. Okay, yeah. So
sorry, Bradley. Robert's rules, move second, open for discussion. That's how I.
Okay, yeah. So we can open the discussion then on this. Any comments, additions, recommendations, things that we would change about recommendation 3?
I mean, I think you can drop the third sub-bullet under oversee and coordinate advisory council. But, you know, essentially what I'm getting into is what we've struggled with today. There needs to be a very clear guidance on how voting works so that the vote can happen in a timely manner.
Yeah. Yes, that makes sense. Martha?
In evaluating effectiveness of the program, totally agree. The second sub-bullet should include the evaluation of other PROs. I mean, include the evaluation of Maryland's PRO. it's not just a matter of looking at the plans all the time, but it seems to me that that MDE should have the ability to commission an evaluation of the PRO.
Yeah, and Peter, do you have?
And an evaluation of that, and I'm not sure that that's really clear from the sub-bullets.
Sorry, if I can just add, I think, Martha, that's meant to be dealt with in the first bullet, which is compliance. So the department would be in charge of ensuring that producers are in compliance with their requirements. So if they're potentially under-reporting or not reporting in or not paying fees, as well as the pro to make sure that they're meeting the program plan that's been set out or other targets potentially associated with the way the legislation set out. So I think that's sort of somewhat fully built into the compliance side, but happy if there's additional language that needs to be, or that the advisory council wants to add on that side.
I guess what I'm getting at here is that the PRO is an instrument for achieving certain program objectives for the state.
Correct.
And it's not just a matter of whether the PRO is meeting the requirements. If the program itself is not succeeding in meeting those objectives, then we need to reconsider what the PR should do. And that's what I mean by evaluating the program. Is what we've got in place sufficient to meet the objectives we hope for?
So Mark,
from the issues having to do with the compliance of the PRO, and whether it's doing its job, or maybe it's doing its job, but it's just not enough. You know what I'm saying? Maybe we need more. So that's what I meant by evaluation of the effectiveness of the program.
If I may interject, look at evaluating effectiveness of the program. Is that included there? That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
The sub-bullets seem to make it a lot narrower to, reviewing the plan systematically and evaluating other PROs and approving yearly reports, and not actually, sometimes the sub-bullets make it sound much more specific and limited than the main bullet.
So what, Martha, what if evaluating
That's what I'm saying.
Of the program and pro, would that?
That's fine. The program and the pro, but
so
periodically reviewing the plan and so forth, that's reviewing their kind of compliance in effect is another way. I'm just worried those sub bullets make it sound much more limited than the bigger bullet.
So do we remove the lower bullets, the sub bullets?
I would put like review and approve yearly reports as another bullet further to the left. That's more generally reviewing and approving, approving and reviewing plans and annual reports is a separate bullet, as opposed to evaluating the effectiveness of the program. Does that make sense to people? I come from an evaluation background. We don't want to lose track of the achievement of the ultimate outcomes that Maryland needs from this program, and not just limit it to specifically what the annual reports, the plan. There's the reporting and all that is important for assessing. If we're not achieving our objectives, is it because the PRO didn't perform, or it's because it's performing but we didn't get it right in trying to define the program to be more effective overall? That's what I'm trying to get at. So I'm worried when suddenly it just becomes the annual review of and approval of plans.
Yeah, so I did add a separate bullet for reviewing and approving yearly reports submitted to MDE by the pro. Peter, I think you had a comment also.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, I mean, are you approving the annual reports? Like that seems like a weird thing to do. You're going to review them and you potentially ask for questions if there's other issues, but I'm just wondering.
This is MDE. This is what MDE's responsibilities are, right? I'm not talking about the
Yeah, I guess I'm asking the question, are you approving the annual reports that the pro submits?
Yeah. MDE is MDE should have to review and approve the annual reports, and also approve the plans, the periodic plans. But what I was saying is, in terms of evaluating the effectiveness of the program, it shouldn't be limited to those functions. It should include the idea of a broader evaluation of whether the objectives of this whole packaging thing are actually being met by what we put in place. But they should have the ability to do that periodically.
That makes
To
sense.
see what we
Martha.
missed, what did we miss?
I think it makes sense, Martha, what you're saying.
And so just that, I've seen some of the discussion in other states. If, let's say, a producer is not meeting their goals, then there could be asks from the state on the pro, like, what's the plan to get folks back on track? And then before that report is, I guess, finalized. And Peter, I know you're dealing with this in Colorado, or Scott.
Yeah, I guess I'm just wondering, I mean, if the plan is getting reviewed every 5 years, meaning probably within 4 years, you're starting to reevaluate. It's a lot going on. And every year you're looking at the reports and you're looking at, are we meeting the objectives? Yeah, I'm just wondering what additionally that means we're adding.
We could have set, the program could have set, it might be the PRO is performing perfectly the way they're supposed to, but still the program isn't achieving the objectives that we wanted from the, overall, not from the fault of the PRO, but because maybe there was some strategic decision that was made that we didn't know about, or conditions have changed. And so there should be an opportunity to periodically see if the program overall, as it's set, is meeting its objectives, and if not, how the program might be tweaked. And I'm not talking about, cracking down on the PRO or PRO not necessarily achieving its what it's agreed to do in its plans. It's a bigger picture issue. And I think MDE should have the ability to commission such a review. Maybe it would be every 10 years. I don't know, but periodically to do that.
Scott, I think you had a comment.
Yeah, thanks. I think, let me see if I can try to help a little bit. Typically, there's 5-year pro plans, and the first pro plan is going to recommend, progress towards a goal. What Martha may be, and I'm just trying to help. The pro is typically going to say, we have a set of, we haven't gotten all our producers in yet. I mean, there's going to be things that the pro is looking to accomplish as well that will probably be dictated in the legislation by, are there substantial numbers of producers who haven't registered yet? Are there producers that aren't meeting, that are struggling to get to their goals? And I think maybe what Martha's suggesting isn't so much of an approve or not approve the annual report, but MDE, I assume, has the ability to respond to the annual report and make suggestions to the pro, about how to improve things that the pro has detailed in the annual report. But you may want to put a little bit more detail about the obligations of producers being in the annual report and the pro's assessment of where it is against the 5-year goal. They're going to do another 5-year plan, typically 5-year plan, in most all of the other states, and then that's your opportunity to substantially change, goals and objectives.
So respond to, and Martha, this was initially yours. Respond to yearly reports and ask for countermeasures where interim goals are not being met, or yeah.
I'm worried about the reporting being a list of outputs, a list of outputs separated from the eventual outcomes. It could be that all the outputs are delivered by the PRO. We're doing exactly what was agreed to. But when we look at what we hope, the outcomes that we want for Maryland, that wasn't enough to get us where we want to be. So they have to be able to commission an independent evaluation that says, what did we miss? How can we be more effective the PRO, MDE, everybody to get to the objectives we want. And that could end up to being a tweak to the program itself. I'm just saying, don't rule that out. It just shouldn't be annual plans and whether they're met, but whether the outcomes we want. I mean, are we getting redesigned for, with the existing incentives or redesigning packaging, for example, if that was one of the objectives? All the environmental impacts and health impacts we were talking about that packaging can have, is the program that we've designed and we've tried to implement as well as we can actually working? And that is something you would get a third party for to look into, not necessarily rely on just whether the deliverables were delivered, but whether they're having the intended effect.
Yeah. Sounds like there's a program reevaluation, which could be done with a third party. And I guess we did have review and approve yearly reports right here. I'm going to move on. So I think that might actually be captured already. Chaz?
Just to comment that we should also have the humility to accept the fact that the goals we've set are not achievable. And that in fact, we're going to have to re-examine the goals. I've already seen goals in EPR laws that are simply unachievable.
But isn't that implied already in the review? So
no, because that means the state has to examine its goals also.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
We have this idea that we can legislate and everything will magically happen. Okay? We still have absolutely no results whatsoever from actual implementation of EPR for packaging in this country. So it's all about theory so far. It's nothing about actual proven results. And that's one of my fears about our rush to judgment here on a whole package.
What you've said is exactly the reason why I'm saying that we should be able to, the MDE should be able to commission a third party to look at whether the thing is effective overall. And
well, I just want to make sure that point is part of the discussion.
That's exactly, what I was saying. We're so much unknown. If all we learn from these other projects is that everyone delivered the deliverables that they said they would, we don't know whether they actually resulted in the impacts we wanted. So that's how you do it.
So I had have the
exactly perfect. Yes, that's perfect.
If Martha, if you're okay, then we should progress then. So that's good.
Yeah. Scott, you had a comment?
I'm going to take it back because it looks like we've resolved it. But the first 2 or 3 years is just going to be assembling the producers and things like that. You're not going to have a lot of outcomes in year 1, 2, and 3. That's why you go to the 5 and then you revise. I'm not disagreeing with reviewing an annual report progress towards goal, but the goal in year 1 is get producers to register. The goal in the year
and we
2
do
is
we do have that.
So
we do have that schedule later also.
Yeah.
So we had a lot of good discussion on that. Is there a motion to vote, or do we need to make some more adjustments? All right. I see a motion to vote.
Hold on 1 second, Bradley.
Yeah.
Just change the role of MD should be, I think, consistent with the other ones instead of could be.
Okay. All right. I think that was a good addition. So is there a motion to vote to move this recommendation forward? I see Peter. Is there a second? Frankie? All right. So this is a vote to move this recommendation forward. If you can raise your hand. All right. So I see 13. If folks can put their hands down and vote no to move this recommendation forward. If you can raise your hands. So I see 0 no votes. And then for folks, if you want to abstain from voting, and we will include all of the, if you did not vote in that abstention. So that'd be 4 total. So Chris is abstaining. And then we have 4, that's Republic, and then Angie. And then I think we do have a no vote in there. We have 17 folks online, so that'd be 4 abstaining. All right, cool. Recommendation number 4. I'm gonna separate these a little bit. This is the role of the advisory council should be right here. We already had that recommendation come in to us. So there was a question, what does do not participate means? No more than 2 absences in a calendar year. We've definitely had some folks who haven't participated as much. And then we had this submits recommendations to MDE when necessary. Before, the recommendation was must submit a report each year with recommendations. So that was a comment from CAA, and then there was an addition from the Force and Paper Association that any reports to be posted publicly and presented to the House and Senate committees and the governor, which is pretty typical. So, all right.
Okay. So, but let me help here.
Yeah.
Is there anything here that is atypical? Because it seems to be this one is common sense of what the advisory council will do. Is if we don't have anybody that feels there's anything that is atypical, maybe we can get this one since it's for all of us. Go in. I think Angie raised her hand there.
Angie, did you have a comment? I'm going to move on to Martha.
Yeah, one of the things that we discussed in previous meetings was that the Circular Action Alliance agreed with is that the PRO should not be a member of the advisory council because there's a conflict of interest. The other thing I would say is one of the things that's concerned us is that what we really would like to see is a consensus of the advisory council, right? But the fact is that it's not the same as having an up or down vote. That will be determined a lot by who's supposed to be on the council, what entities are selected. So I would propose considering that when we have a big vote on some or a big issue and there's a dissenting, that the dissenters or the minority be allowed to to explain their concerns so that when these recommendations go up to MDE, they see the whole picture.
So when that came up in our last meeting, this was from my notes as I was typing on the PowerPoint presentations last time, I had it make it clear that the PRO cannot vote / comment on their own plan. It wasn't that they weren't on the council, but maybe as I was typing those notes, that wasn't exactly what folks were thinking. But Peter?
Yeah, typically the PRO is a non-voting member of the board, just because there's going to be lots of questions that need to be answered from the advisory board as they go through, and potentially some background that may be helpful in the board making its decision. So typically it's a non-voting member, and I would not want the PRO to be in a position where it was a voting member of the advisory board or council. Sorry.
So I had make it clear that the PRO is a non-voting council member.
You could also strike in that first sub-bullet that it's advisory in nature, they are not the pro. I mean, that's not necessary to say. That the advisory council is not the pro. It's, yeah, thank you.
Okay.
I would, I've been asking people, even Scott, you know, how the other advisory councils work. And frankly, I don't know if there's a really good way, a good example to show how they work. So any suggestions that you would have, especially the members here would have, in terms of how they are conducted, is something that we should consider.
Yeah, Scott?
Thanks. Look, the Colorado one that I'm on with Peter, each of the Maine doesn't really have one yet. Minnesota's just getting started, just named theirs last week. Oregon had a very different process. California and Colorado, they're I think the key here is captured. We're advising not only the PRO but also MDE on things. And it's exactly what you want advised on. California went into a lot greater detail on its advisory board process and is much more complicated. It's really like a job, you know. I'm not that the Colorado one isn't, after how many hours we have spent on the Colorado advisory board, but
Yeah.
I think this largely captures it, Martha. It's advice to the pro and MDE on the goals and the structure, and sometimes the gory details about what's on the material, you know, material capture list, what's not on it, you know, when is a material ready to be on the statewide list or not, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and Colorado was having meetings every 2 weeks, was my understanding, but that was in preparation for developing the plan and writing regulations. So they had already had legislation, and they're a little bit, they're in a little bit different part of the life cycle at this point.
We are now, the Colorado Pro is now in not just regular monthly meetings that are official meetings, but in another meeting every month for technical work group on the precise recommendations of the pro plan and things of that nature. So it's advanced now, but at the stage that Maryland is now, it was generally monthly, and then it ratcheted up to bi-monthly when we were getting ready to finish the needs assessment.
So Bradley, should we vote now with all these inputs?
Yeah.
So yeah, and then we can.
Yep. So I guess, is there a motion to vote?
Bradley, I have one more comment. I apologize.
Oh, sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Since the second to last bullet requirements to meet on a certain frequency doesn't necessitate or specify when, and I guess, can we clarify who's going to set that frequency? And then right above it, instead of 2 absences, could we do a percentage? You know, if you're meeting, you know, twice a month, all of us are busy professionals, you know, we miss 2
no,
seems, so maybe a percentage, you know, no more than 25%, 30%. I don't know what the percentage is. So those are my 2
And so
comments.
and we have a few people who have sent a second to represent them on the call today. So you can keep in mind, you can always do that.
Okay.
But yeah, we can change
And
it
if
to
none of the other council members have a concern with that, and they think 2 absences, you know, with a second is significant for them, then that's fine. Just observance.
yeah, and then you had to meet on a certain frequency. Is this at least monthly or quarterly, or, and we can have more?
Or at least maybe specify who sets the frequency. Is it, you know, obviously it's going to be needs-based, needs to be robust, depending on what the council needs to produce. But is it MDE dictating how frequently, or is it the council members agreeing upon it? So Martha has her hand up. She might have an add-on to this, or.
Yeah, I was going to say that, I mean, a certain amount of this is stuff that could be decided in rulemaking, but I wanted to just get back to this issue about how we report our advice. You understand that there are 2 environmental organizations out of the 21. And if you keep going on majority votes, then if the environmental group, and this could apply to any one of these other, stakeholders that has something different to say or a concern, it seems to me it's in the interest of advising MDE in the program of what those concerns are, and not just saying the majority voted on this. And so I think that there should be room in here for minority views to be expressed so that the decision makers are fully informed of what those concerns were. That's all. But I think the frequency of the meetings is something that could be dealt with. I don't know if this is for statute or for rulemaking that we're making these recommendations, but some of the level of details could be decided later. Thank you.
So room for minority views to be a part of the record. And
Right.
Okay. All right.
Then maybe just change required to meet on a certain frequency, just for ease of read. The advisory council should be required instead of
Okay. All right. Do we have a motion to vote? See, Chris has his hands up. Do we have a second? I see Peter has his hands up. So vote. This would be to yes is to move this recommendation. Move this recommendation forward as written. So if folks can raise their hand. So I see 14. All right. If folks can lower their hands now, if you are a no vote on moving this forward. I see 0. The next one is going to be if you abstain from voting. Please raise your hand. We do have, I see 2. We have 17 members online, so that would be 3 abstaining. All right. I saw that there was another motion from Peter after this vote. Can I move a second motion for the advisory council to meet this week to finish the recommendations? Do we have a second on that? Okay. So vote. A yes is to meet again the week of 2-3-25 to finish recommendations. All right.
If we can.
So, Brad, we still have time, though, to continue at least till we exhaust our time here, see where we go. But
time is exhausted.
Yeah. I think
Can I ask a
I agree
detailed-
with the motion. Mhm.
Can I ask a detailed question before we vote? So will that mean that we still meet next week, or that's instead of next week?
I think it would probably be instead of this week. We were really trying to get something out.
Okay. We just need to be mindful of everybody, everyone's time and effort. So that would be good. So it's instead of meeting next week.
I would
Yes.
not hold out the need to meet next week. We're being asked to do a lot of work in a very compressed amount of time. And as anybody who's watched the Great British Baking Show knows, if you rush the cake, you got a problem. And right now, my friends, we are rushing the cake.
Yeah, Martha, you had a comment?
No, I was just trying to put something in the chat and hit the wrong button.
Oh, yeah, Abigail.
I have a hard stop at 11:30 as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, next week there's a pretty solid chance that we will see an EPR bill. And so perhaps from that perspective, it would be worth us meeting in order to review, but that might not need to happen next week. I would also note that while I sought to put forward productive changes on this discussion, I think that, oh gosh, I'm going to make someone angry by saying this, but we could vote to submit a letter that says that the recommendation of this advisory council is that not enough is completed and we cannot submit recommendations and support EPR legislation passing at this time. I don't want to derail the progress being made, but I also want to recognize that even if we get this all done, we have that option. There is nothing that says we can't say, the perspective of the advisory council is this needs more time.
Yes. And as we heard from our secretary and Augustine, and then Senator Augustine 2 meetings ago, I think there's definitely going to be EPR legislation this year. So I think
so. Abigail, you saying we should vote on that?
No, not at this time. I think that's like perhaps something we raise at the end of our discussion at the second meeting this week, perhaps is, I don't know. I don't want to assume everyone else's perspective because I think there has been productive discussion here. And that might shift the angle as we get through things. When we look at the full body of work, do we feel that this is robust enough that there is something worthy of use?
So we do have a few some days to choose from. So typically these meetings are on Thursdays. How does Thursday morning work for folks?
Works for me.
So what I can do, we can schedule something on Thursday. I will send out this copy with the comments that we received from folks on Friday and Monday also today. And then so that you can have some more time to digest and then we can go from there. And if you can send a second as well, if you're not able to make the meeting, you have the ability to do that as well.
But brother, if I may add though, and the meeting is to review the rest of the recommendations, okay?
Right.
So that people can focus on that. That would be very helpful. Okay, Thursday, good.
And I just want to say, tapping on to the theme that Abigail raised, but a little bit different is, I think we should think about this. I think we've made really good progress. Today has been great discussion. And I think everybody really wants to move the ball forward, but different people have different perspectives on how quickly and, given what we have accomplished to date or gotten to date. I wonder out loud if there's a way for us to make recommendations on the things that clearly you can see from the progress on how we voted, that there's a higher comfort level with more of us on specific types of recommendations. So what if we did a hybrid and went forward with those types of recommendations, and then a recommendation that maybe that this is to the advisory council an iterative process, and that, you know, additional more specific, you know, we're working on additional more specific recommendations, blah, blah, blah. Some kind of, that
Yeah.
would be my suggestion, that we start to think about seriously. Do,
Yeah.
you know, do what we can do comfortably now to satisfy the desire that clearly there is to get something recommended, but acknowledge that this, you know, this is devoid of some of the information that many of us want to have the benefit of, to recommend specific details for Maryland to make sure that this is successful. But, you know, that this is what we can do at this point.
Yeah.
And more to come.
I think that's a fair point. These are recommendations prior to legislation being dropped. I suspect most of the folks on this call are going to be testifying as well. We're going to be drafting regulations, which we will want the advisory council's input on those as well. And then the program plan is going to is going to go through the advisory council too. So there's going to be a lot more opportunities to be involved in the process. This definitely isn't a one and done, but I definitely hear the concern there.
But
So-
and I'm also saying, Bradley, to put that specifically in the legislation or the, you know,
The
whatever
letter.
it is. Yeah,
It'll be a letter from the co-chairs probably.
right.
Brad-
A letter.
Bradley, a lot of people are dropping, so I think I want to make sure everybody gets the benefit of hearing all of us. So maybe we will pick it up with the work on Thursday, since we've got a lot of people there. And please, if you can't come, send somebody to designate somebody to come in your place. I would say that this has been, for me, very refreshing, and I'm really grateful that we have such a passionate group. But more importantly, that people, even when we don't fully agree, understand the reason that we need to move something forward. So it's really a pleasure working with this group, and I'm sitting here, you know, very happy with the progress we're making. Okay, thank you all very much. Brad, I'm going to hand over to you. Angie, any other last minute comment?
Yeah, there was a question about the needs assessment. So my team has reviewed the whole needs assessment. We have comments on those. It's with our senior leadership right now. So we're hoping to get all those comments back to our contractor and publish the report. And then I do have to, we have to open up the meeting for a public comment. Are there any public comments from any of the other people who are on the call? All right. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the robust discussion and setting up a meeting Thursday morning. I did see the comments about timing in there as well. All right. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.